I'm 61 and I rent my home, and I've just run the numbers and I've realised that I'm going to need a lot more money than I ever anticipated for retirement. Most advice that I have sought online has been based around people who are going to have a mortgage that's been paid up, and they seem to forget about renters like myself. I want to talk honestly about what this looks like for me and how I'm going to go about preparing. Now, this has come about because I have recently come out of a long-term relationship, which I thought was going to carry on for the rest of my life. And therefore, I thought in retirement that I would be on, bills with myself and my partner would be paid 50-50. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like it's going to happen for me anyway, and I will be responsible for 100% of all my income and outgoings. So I've had to recalculate the numbers and it's not looking good. Rent is my biggest bill and my biggest outgoing, and that's not going to go away. And research online has shown that 90% of renters are totally unprepared for retirement, haven't factored this in. But when you are doing pension planning, most of the time, it's all based around those people who are lucky enough to have a mortgage and who are buying their own home. And once that's paid off, they are then going to be living rent-free, mortgage payment-free. Whereas for people like myself, and possibly you, that's not a reality for us. We rent, and therefore a good percentage of our income goes to paying rent. And then there's the council tax on top of that. And although living as a single, you get a 25% discount in the UK, that's still where I live anyway. That's still a lot of money. For me, that's £179 a month, which is massive compared to other people in the country. And my rent is £950 a month today. So when I retire in 6 to 10 years, possibly longer, the rent will have gone up. So the money that I am now paying out for those two bills are coming to just under £1,200. That's an awful lot of money to find from the state pension. The way that it's standing at the moment, the state pension is under £1,000. So with my pre-retirement plans having changed dramatically, and I am going to have to find 100% of my retirement costs by myself, I really have to face the reality of my income and my expenditure. And trying to find advice online is not easy. For a start, a lot of the advice given are for those with pension pots that are massive. And we're talking, over £500,000. Well, my personal pension is nowhere near that. So the reality check, it has become to me quite overwhelming. It's giving me a lot of anxiety and some sleepless nights, trying to work out how I'm going to resolve my situation or my coming situation. And in fact, it's probably a perceived situation, because by the time I come to retire, it might not look like this anyway. So I am becoming anxious about something that's not even happened. However, having said that, it's always good to plan. Now, I'm 61 and the retirement age in the UK is 67. So I have 6 years until I am scheduled to retire. Based on the figures, the preliminary figures that I have run recently, I don't think I'm going to have enough money to retire at 67. So it looks like I am going to have to plan to carry on working, which is not something that is new to me, because originally, until this year, I was planning on working until I was in my 70s. But that was coming from a place of wanting to keep my brain active and to not get bored. But just recently, and especially this year, I have started to actually think about wanting to retire and not working. But it looks like I'm going to have to revert back to plan A, because I'm not going to be able to afford to retire at 67, not on the figures that I've run. So why doesn't anybody ever talk about this? Why isn't there more education given at job placements? I mean, yes, along the lines, when I worked for the bigger companies, I was given access to advisors that gave me some advice, but it never really sank in full. I'm not trying to pin the blame on somebody else, because I know that that was partially my fault. I should really have thought about plan B, because plan A was obviously going to be retiring with a partner and not having all of these worries anyway. But I never really thought about plan B, and I should have put more money away. But, you know, I can't look back because I am here where I am now. But why isn't it talked about more? So all the retirement planning videos that I've watched on YouTube and I've researched on the internet, they're all based around, or most of them, about 95% of them, are based around people who are going to be mortgage free when they come to retire. And that's a huge, massive difference in the outgoings that you have. And it would be nice if I didn't have to pay that, but unfortunately we don't get rent-free accommodation when we reach our retirement age in the UK. You know, it's a fact of life. So what am I going to do about it? I have got a very small pension, and the only reason that that's got to the value that it is now is because I was very cavalier with it when I started it up. I didn't even think that I would need it, so I just said to them, yeah, put it in a high risk retirement fund, and I just left it. And I stopped paying into it once I left that job. I stopped paying into it. But however, because it was left in high risk, it's actually done pretty well. From the small amount of money that I had, it's actually done really well. But if I'd have continued to pay into it, it would have been much, much better. But again, I can't look back, and it is what it is. And I'm lucky that it's got as far as it's got. I have to bear in mind that rent will only increase. It's not going to increase at the same rate as inflation. I doubt very much whether my £950 rent is going to be £950 in 6 years' time. It's highly doubtful. And unless the state pension increases significantly between now and then, I'm actually going to need more money than I do now. Does that make sense? So I have been trying to work out and research and trawl through all the different pages on the internet to find out if I would be entitled to any benefits. So just taking the fact that I could continue working out of the equation, and just to find out if I could live on the state pension and the small amount of pension that I would have, and what I would possibly be entitled to claim for. So there's the possibility that I would be able to claim housing benefit because of the high cost of my rent. However, in my local area, it's capped, and it's capped at a lot lower than £950. It's 700 and something. I can't remember the exact figure. So when I found that out, of course, that's added to my worries. I also needed to find out whether I could get council tax benefit. I can't figure that one out at the moment, but I think I'm going to have to ring them and find out just to see where I stand. Nowhere gives you exact figures, and I can't at the moment find a calculator that will tell me, but I'm sure I'll figure that out. And not only am I going to have to continue working, but I am probably going to have to find somewhere that's cheaper than £950. Otherwise, I'm just going to be working well into my 70s and possibly 80s. I don't know whether my health will be able to accommodate that. So the steps that I've taken so far are that I am trying to project my income, and I'm trying to project my expenses. And then once I've done that, I'm going to do a variable on those. And I know that sounds complicated, but it just means that I am going to do a projection based around taking out some expenses, and also putting in a downsize of apartment. But then I've also thought, and this was one thing I did think about, was when I decide to move, I might try and get myself into a retirement property. So what they possibly call assisted living, or the one a step away from that, so that I am then in a place where I will be looked after once I get older. I mean, that's a possibility. That's a thought that's crossed my mind. I could do that, because they tend to be cheaper, and also you expect to stay there. You don't expect to have that property sold up from underneath you, or you be given notice that, you know, for whatever reason that they want to sell it or something. they are usually owned by housing associations. So that's one thing that I have thought of that might help. But the timing of that is something I'd have to think about. I'm not ready for a place like that just yet, but it's got to be on the list of possibilities. So part of this is going to be looking at how to reduce my expenses. And I know without even looking that I spend far too much on TV, as in I pay for Prime television, I pay for Netflix, I pay for Apple TV, I pay for YouTube without the adverts, I pay for a couple of other small channels, I think, and this is usually because I've watched a series on one of them, or I've wanted to watch a series, so I've started to pay for it and I've never cancelled it. So I have a car, so I'm going to have to factor in that it's the car's quite old now. I think it's about 12 years old. So I'm going to have to factor in more maintenance costs than it's had before. Possibly a replacement if something major was to go wrong with it. But you know, that's a major expense I don't have at the moment that could possibly come into force at some point. I have dallied on thinking about, well, maybe I should just lease a car, but then you've signed up for usually 3 years, and that would be expected to be a couple of hundred, if not £300 to £400 a month. That money I'd need to find. So I don't think that's really an option, although it's on the list of options. One other thing I've decided is I've increased my contributions to my smaller pension pots. I have at the moment, to my knowledge, 3 pension pots. That is the second main one, and the third one is a very, very small one that I did a drawdown from. Silly, really, I shouldn't have done it, but I did. So I've decided that the first pension I can't pay into anymore, because once I left that job and I didn't continue to pay into it, it's closed, so I can't pay. I can move it, but I can't pay into it. The second one, I've increased the payments for, so that I've got more money going into it. And the third one, I'm thinking about possibly either increasing the payment or stopping it and pushing all the money into the second one. I'm not really sure yet. I'd rather have money in several pots, if I'm honest, just in case anything was to happen in the market and there was a dive about the same time as I retire. But some I think are in stock. I'm not really sure about how it's all working, but I don't want everything in stocks and shares just in case. So one of them I think could turn into a savings ISA possibly, rather than it being a pension pot. Those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. And one of the options I've got is YouTube. So I've only recently started posting videos on YouTube. I'm a very, very, very small channel, but I am hoping that in the next couple of years I will get some traction and I could possibly have some income from YouTube by the time I get to 67. So in 6 years, I'm hoping that it will possibly provide me with a small income. I'm not expecting to get, thousands of pounds per month, but something extra would be good. Anything is possible, so that's just another option. With my business, I, at the moment, work part-time, and it provides me enough money to pay for all my bills. So the thought of carrying on working into my 70s is not really a bad choice. And if I was to continue into my 80s, there's the option to reduce the working hours to possibly 3 days a week as I get past 70. There's that option. So although I'm getting very anxious and worrying and having some sleepless nights at the moment, I do have options. I've just got to dig a bit deeper into what I can do and what I can find out and gather all the information I can. And once I've got that information, then I'm in a position to make a much better decision for myself than just by sitting here and worrying about it. So what I'm looking to achieve is a mindset reshift. I need to stop worrying, and I need to start thinking about retirement as an adjustment, I guess, an adjustment between the working life and the retirement life. Initially, I'm going to have to carry on working part-time, but with the view to having a full retirement later on. So planning for semi-retirement is not a cliff edge. It's basically what I'm doing now, in all honesty. I'm just going to have to continue it for far more years than I thought I was going to have to, but it's life. So if you're in your 50s and 60s and you're renting, you should really start investigating how much money, or projecting how much money that you're going to need to pay for your rent, and look at all the options that you have. And I think if you do it sooner rather than later, then you'll be much better prepared, and you won't have the same anxiety and worries that I have, although I'm only 61. We need to start having these conversations because nobody else is going to start them, because everybody's going to think that everybody else is in a much better position than they are, but they don't realise that there must be hundreds of thousands of people pre-retirement who are renters and who have no option but to continue to pay rent. So there must be a huge population in this country that are in exactly the same boat, and yet we're not talking about it. And I think the sooner that we get to our reality and know exactly, or an exact amount as we can do, because they are only projections, then the better off we will be. Renting in retirement is going to be tough, but facing it early is going to give us a lot more control. I'll keep sharing what I learned, and if you could share what you know, I would be very, very grateful, because you might be further along the process than I am, and you might know more things about the benefits that you can claim than I do. So any advice or any knowledge that you have, if you could pass that on in the comments, that I would be so grateful. And I think there would be a lot of people that would be grateful as well. Let me know in the comments if you rent, and let me know what your biggest concerns about retirement and renting are, and hopefully we can answer as many questions as possible so that we've all got a similar understanding of what's ahead of us. Thanks for watching. Please forgive the head cold that I have. I'm a little bit under the weather, but hey ho. I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.